Larry Bird, a legend so amazing he shakes the entire American Midwest like lightning tearing open the Indiana sky. A symbol forever carved into basketball itself. He wasn't just a forward. He was a bright guiding light. The strong warrior who lifted the Boston Celtics from the bottom, pulled the entire NBA out of its darkest time, and turned every game with Magic Johnson into an epic battle that rewrote the history of American sports. 3 NBA championships, 3 MVP titles in a row, 12 All-Star selections. The first player ever to reach the amazing 50, 40, 90 mark. Numbers not just great. They explode like shooting stars, leaving a burning path across an entire time period. But legends are always made through pain. And Larry's brightness was covered by storms the world never truly saw. Wounds deeper than victory. Heavy loads no champion should ever have to carry alone. And at 68, what pain still won't let him go? If you're ready to step into the fire and the darkness of this amazing life, tap like as a worthy tribute to the man who rose from nothing and changed the very meaning of greatness. It's sad how life can deliver its hardest hits in places so quiet the world never notices the damage. Larry Joe Bird came into the world on December 7th, 1956 in West Baden, Indiana, and grew up in the tiny nearby town of French Lick, a forgotten corner of the Midwest where winters cut through your coat and being poor stuck to families like a second skin. He was one of 6 children squeezed into an old home, held together almost entirely by the strong will of their mother, Georgia. She worked herself beyond tired. Cafeteria jobs before sunrise, waitress jobs long after dark, and any odd job she could find just to keep her children warm and fed. The Bird survived on almost nothing. Jackets too thin for bitter winds, shoes worn until the bottoms nearly fell away, and bills piling on the table like quiet threats. But for Larry, the deepest wound wasn't cold or hunger. It was watching his mother's tired hands shake as she counted just enough money to make it through another day. Looking back, he once said softly, "Everything I'm started with watching her fight." Even the walls of that small house felt heavy, filled with worries the children were never meant to hear. His father, Claude Joseph Joe Bird, was a Korean War veteran carrying wounds no one could see. Silent battles that got tighter with each passing year. The weight of those private struggles seeped into the home, turning conversations into arguments and arguments into long, choking silences. By the early 1970s, the marriage had broken under the pressure. And then came 1975, when Larry was only 18. That year, Joe lost his long private battle and left the world far too soon at just 42 years old. A loss so sudden and heartbreaking it split the Bird family down its center. The house felt colder, the hallways empty. The silence, so heavy it pressed on Larry's chest like a weight he couldn't escape. Decades later, when asked about that time, he offered only a few careful words. "I just needed something to do." In another rare moment of openness, he admitted losing him changed everything. And it did because that loss, as crushing as it was, became the strength that shaped Larry's character. As one reporter once put it, grief didn't harden him, it built him. French Lick felt even smaller in the months that followed. Opportunity was hard to find, money tighter than ever, and Georgia pushed herself past her limits just to keep the family going. Larry learned toughness not from pep talks or hero tales, but from watching his mother wake before dawn. Her shoulders tired, yet her determination strong. Responsibility found him early. He grew quieter, more guarded, carrying a sadness he rarely named. Yet somewhere inside that pain, a stubborn spark began to glow. Weak but never giving up. The spark of survival, fighting back, and a spirit that refused to bend. Years later, he'd recall, "I wasn't chasing greatness. I was just trying not to give up." It wasn't big dreams that lit his fire. It was keeping going. Basketball became the place where that spark finally breathed. The cracked concrete courts of French Lick became his safe place. Their rusted rims, chipped paint, and fading lines the only steady things in a world falling apart. Under harsh Indiana skies, he stayed outside until darkness swallowed the town, dribbling until his fingertips stung, shooting until his shoulders burned, breathing clouds into the cold air. Each shot, each echo of the ball hitting the rim, felt like proof he was still fighting. By the time he reached Springs Valley High School, his numbers were amazing. 31 points and 21 rebounds per game. Statistics that seemed impossible for a boy from a place so small it barely appeared on the map. But behind every point was a young man clawing his way out of heartbreak, being poor and silence. And in that lonely struggle on those cracked courts beneath those harsh Midwestern skies, the fire that would one day light up an entire league was born. Quietly, painfully, successfully. When Larry Bird stepped into the NBA in 1979, the league didn't just welcome a new rookie. It prepared for a storm decades in the making. Boston was struggling then, a dynasty rusting under faded banners and fans who had grown tired of hoping for miracles. But when Bird signed his huge contract, hope returned, but so did pressure. Bird heard it all, but he didn't flinch. I knew I had to deliver. No excuses, he recalled. The moment his sneakers touched the iconic parquet floor, Boston felt something it hadn't felt in years. Belief. The transformation was immediate and huge. In his rookie season, Bird lifted the Celtics from 29 wins to 61. A turnaround so amazing it felt supernatural. But greatness has a cost. He worked like a man racing time itself, arriving before dawn, shooting until his arms went numb, watching film until his eyes burned. By 1981, he delivered a championship to a city starving for resurrection. And throughout the mid-'80s, he built a legend that now feels larger than life. 3 MVP awards in a row. But behind the highlight reels was tiredness the world never saw. At the center of his rise stood the greatest rivalry American sports has ever known. Bird versus Magic. Their games weren't matchups. They were national events. Boston versus Los Angeles. Grit versus glamour. Bird won in 1984, but the years that followed brought heartbreak sharp enough to wound pride. Then came the pain that would haunt him forever. His back injury got worse in 1985 when he spent days lifting and spreading literal tons of gravel to build a driveway for his mother. The pain began as a whisper, then roared. Some nights he lay flat on the locker room floor, staring at the ceiling because he couldn't sit. Yet he refused to quit. If I could walk, I could play, he insisted. And he meant it. By the late 80s, Bird's legend towered above the league. But his body was falling apart beneath him. He gave Boston everything he had. 3 championships, more than 21,000 points, 8,000 rebounds, and 5,000 assists. Numbers not made by talent alone, but by suffering turned into discipline. Yet, the cruelest truth waited at the end. Pain would write the final chapter. By 1992, at just 35, Bird knew the fire inside him still raged. But the body carrying it was done. He walked away the only way he knew how. Quietly, humbly, without ceremony. I wasn't ready to leave, he admitted years later. But my body made the choice for me. Some legends rise through glory. Larry Bird rose through pain and turned it into something the world will never forget.